This is the Self Storage Podcast, where we share the knowledge and skills from the industry's leading investors, developers, and operators to help you launch and grow your self-storage business. I'm your host, Scott Meyers, and over the past 16 years, we have acquired, developed, converted, and syndicated over 2 million square feet of self-storage nationwide with the help of my incredible team at selfstorageinvesting.com, who has helped thousands of people achieve greatness in self-storage. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Self Storage Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Meyers, and our next guest is my good friend, Chris Miles, who I met at a mastermind that we are both a part of. Now, Chris is a cash flow expert and is recognized nationwide as the anti-financial advisor, and he'll get into that in just a moment. He's also a leading authority in teaching entrepreneurs and professionals how to get their money working for them today, not just during retirement or after they have a big nest egg, but how he gets their money working for them today. He's also an author. He's a podcast host of the Chris Miles Money Show and has been featured in U.S. News, CNN Money, and on the podcast EOFire, and many other places. And his company, Money Ripples, at moneyripples.com, specializes in getting his clients fast, life-altering financial results. In fact, his personal clients have increased their cash flow by over $200 million in the last 10 years. Yes, that's why I have Chris on here, because he knows his stuff when it comes to money. So with that, Chris, why don't you fill in the gaps on your bio and tell us a little bit about what you've been up to since the last time you and I saw each other?
Yeah, well, one of the big accomplishments is in third grade, I got 5th place in my spelling bee. That was pretty cool accomplishment.
All right.
Got to add that to my bio at some point, right? It's interesting because I started out as being, even before I was the anti-financial advisor, right? I started as being the traditional mainstream financial advisor, in the early 2000s, right around Y2K. You guys remember 9/11? That's the perfect time that I came in as a financial advisor. And I got to see the ugly truth of the markets, right? And the funny thing is I actually really liked helping people with money. And I bought into it hook, line, and sinker about all the traditional things you hear in the media, everything you hear from Dave Ramsey to Susie Orman to whomever, right? I would teach the same old junk of, spend nothing, save everything, save it forever. And then hopefully someday you might have something, right? And that's been the traditional retirement model. And the truth is that now financial advisors have been on the scene for 40 plus years and it hasn't worked, right? Like people are not retiring any better off than they were. And I started to see that back in the early 2000s. I was in that business for 4 years and I saw that I'd inherit clients from decades of advice and they weren't really that close to retirement. They might've had a few $100,000, like whoop-de-doo. You can't retire off that, because the traditional financial model says you got to save and accumulate and buy mutual funds, right? And that's really what it comes down to. If you really narrow it down, they're just salesmen in suits telling you to buy mutual funds that they say have averaged 10 or 12%, but in truth, the actual returns are more like 7, if that. And especially when you factor in fees and before you factor in taxes. And when you start to run real numbers, which is what I did, and this was about 2005, I started to run actual numbers, real market returns, and it was depressing. And then when I threw in real inflation numbers, it was even more depressing. I'm thinking, there's no way that anybody can retire. In fact, I just did an episode on my podcast where even with a 401k, with 100% match, you max fund your 401k and you get 100% match, usually up to like 6% or whatever, right? You will never, ever be able to retire on a middle-class lifestyle. You will be in poverty. Like you will be in an impoverished lifestyle, especially when you factor in inflation. And so when I started running those numbers, I was in this dilemma, right? It's like, what do I do? Like my pocketbook is tied to teaching this junk, right? But at the same time, I can't keep, selling people. Literally, that's all I was doing is just selling people on products. And that's about the time when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And one of my friends who was in real estate investing, him and I had this nice little discussion. It was right after Christmas of 2005. And we're going back and forth, what's better, stocks or real estate? And finally, he just stopped me and said, Chris, how many of your clients are financially free right now? I said, well, what do you mean by financially? Like, you mean like they can retire? He's like, no, like they don't worry about money. Like not just retired broke, but not worried about money right now. I said, well, I've got some retired doctors, but they watch CNN and nobody can feel happy watching CNN. So no one's free. And he said, well, okay, great job, Chris. All right, well, how about this, Chris? Like if anybody's got this figured out, it should be you guys as financial advisors. How many of you guys are financially free, not off the commissions and the business you're getting, recurring business, but actually off doing these mutual fund investments you've been recommending? And I thought about it. I said, well, probably none. I can't think of any of them. Maybe it was one guy. And I found out later he wasn't either. He was just all, he was, as they say, all hat and no cattle, right? So he was just showing off, but he really had no lifestyle there. He's like, well, there's your problem. I said, well, tell me the answer. He's like, I won't tell you the answer because I don't think you're open to it. I'm like, okay, you can't do this to me and not tell me the answer. Tell me. He's like, all right, if you're really serious, get this book by Robert Kiyosaki called Who Took My Money, which is a lesser known rich dad book, right? Which basically rips into mutual funds. And then he said, and then listen to this radio show that these, this local AM radio show that these real estate investors are putting on and that they're doing. And just like you guys listen to podcasts right now, I started listening to these things and my eyes were opened. And by March of 2006, I put in my resignation with my financial advising practice at an all-time high. I said, I'm done. I can't stay in integrity and teach this stuff anymore because I know better. So I will just do mortgages as a mortgage broker, and I will teach ballroom dancing. The little known fact, I was actually one of the nation's top amateur ballroom dancers. So that's what I started doing. But again, I wanted to learn from these guys how they did what they did. I was actually able to retire myself by summer of 2006. I was actually able to get out of the rat race. And that was like the big thing was, wait a minute, this is all about cash flow. It's not about accumulating and compounding interest. It's about cash flow. And that's what changed my world and why I came out of retirement.
Well, just one more thing, Chris, that I didn't know about you after all these years is that you were a retired ballroom dancing. Do you ever retire from ballroom dancing? I mean, do you?
Well, I kind of did, sadly enough. My wife right now, she doesn't do ballroom dancing or any of that kind of stuff. So occasionally I'll break up the moves, for people if they pay me enough money, maybe. But for the most part, it's one of those things of the past.
Professionally anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we were talking before we got on the show, Chris, we're looking at the landscape right now and what investors are looking for. So I wanted to touch on, the folks that you're advising and working with right now. Mm-hmm. We all know things have changed, and on the private equity side of the business, not only our company but several of the listeners out there are raising capital for the projects. So what are you seeing out there from your clients that are getting involved into syndications or putting money into, say, a real estate fund? What type of returns are they seeking, or security versus growth? Tell me what the landscape looks like right now and how that has changed since March of this year.
The biggest change I've seen is that people are willing to play a little bit more defense to go with that offense, right? They want to make sure that they've got enough cash reserves, cash that's there. Some of them are waiting for the big deals that might come when things really hit the fan, which they haven't yet. We know that. You're probably you're the one I mention all the time to my clients saying, hey, if there's anything that's going to see it first, it's going to be in self-storage, right? And you're already seeing that. You're seeing deals pop up everywhere. But for the most part, people want cash flow, at least people that seek me out, right? They want to create passive income. They want to get better returns on their money and do something different than the traditional 401ks or mutual funds and all the stuff that are really just government plans that make lackluster returns with high risk, right? Like that's really everything that's being offered, and they want that alternative path. So I'm seeing people that are really just saying, all right, what do I do? Like they're kind of frozen a little bit. Some people are in fear. They don't want to do their first deals. But here's the crazy thing. This is actually the best time right now to invest and to get capital ready to invest, right? Few things I see popping up. One is often when I see clients, many people are starting to reduce their expenses and figure out like what's actually worth it, right? Which is great because the more extra cash flow you have available, the extra money you have to invest to build up your cash savings, that just amplifies and accelerates your plan. Because most people hope to retire in 30 or 40 years and they can never do it with a mutual fund. But most people I talk to, we can usually get them to retire within 10 years. They can hit that cash flow number they need to work because they want to, not because they have to. And so when they start to look at it, it's like, hey, well, what are the expenses that really make sense, versus the ones that don't, especially with less traveling and things going on. Some people are literally saving themselves thousands of dollars a month that they can now deploy and make money off of. And when this is the perfect time right now. Two, also right now, like home values that are all-time high. So there's equity trapped in properties that we can turn around and I have people doing a lot of different things with refinancing to get cash out. We can go and make more money off of, especially, oh my goodness, the HELOC rates are dirt cheap. People can make at least triple the money off of that, if not more than what they're paying on their HELOC money, right? And then the third thing that I think is the perfect storm is the market is also at an all-time high. And the stock market, as we all know, is ridiculously high to the point that even investors are saying, this is stupid. Like, there's no reason the market should be this high other than just pure speculation, which is what you want to avoid, right? So, and here's a little part B that goes with that one is the CARES Act. Right now, only in 2020, right? The CARES Act, one thing that many people didn't realize is that with that first bill that came out in late March, we have the ability to access up to $100,000 of our IRA or 401k money that as long as you've been affected, either one, you or your family members got COVID, right? Or two, your family was affected like through work, like economically, financially, you were somehow impacted by COVID, whether your business or your job. If that's the case, you can get $100,000 of your IRA or qualified money, 401k money out. This is not your current employer, right? This is like money that's in old 401k plans or IRAs. You can get that money out with no 10% penalty. So up to $100,000 with no 10% penalty, that saves you 10 grand in taxes right there. You'll still have to pay taxes, but they'll let you split it up over 3 years. So you get to, lessen your tax burden, and you get this cash you can actually go and immediately deploy. And especially like where you got deals like yours or in other real estate deals, right? Where you get tax benefits from investing in your real estate. This is awesome because now you can get it out. Yeah, you might get taxed on it, but now you can invest in a place where now you get tax advantage returns back. It's just like the perfect time right now with home equity, people's account values in the stock market, which may not ever keep going up. We could actually start seeing some down years finally, which has been, again, if you talk about the word unprecedented, which is 2020, we've had unprecedented upswing in the market that we've never seen, where it's gone like almost 11 years straight up. Guys, that never continues.
No.
The risk of it going down is way higher than it going up more. So this could be the perfect time to get your money away from the market, get your money out of your home, get it to actually create real returns. And whether you're doing syndications or you're buying properties or whatever you're doing, this is like the perfect time to start generating better returns outside the market right now.
Mm-hmm. So that's, and therein lies the difference. As you know, Chris, we have our self-storage academy, and we have our home study systems and lots of courses for people that are looking to get into the business, learn a little bit more about it. And we have a flock of folks that are attending our online events and purchasing our courses, yet not as many people jumping in to do it, even though it is the perfect time. Contrast that with our mastermind, our own self-storage mastermind with the A players that have been in it. And then this is their second or third recession. We and they have been preparing for this and absolutely deploying capital and resources and adding. We're adding staff at a pretty good clip right now. And yes, making hay while the sun is shining. But one thing I wanted to touch on, I want to pull on the thread about the CARES Act. So, and going back to the private equity side, as we do our webinars when we're raising capital for our projects, we've had internal discussions about how, do we promote and how much do we promote the CARES Act provisions of being able to take money out, but then also borrowing that you didn't mention borrowing the additional $100,000 against that. And maybe you didn't mention that for the same reason that we don't as much. We have a little bit of a dilemma as to, whether we go down that path of really promoting that for folks. So do you tell me where the pitfalls are? Obviously you have to pay taxes back on that, but now with the CARES Act, the double dip, being able to pull some out and then borrow another 100,000 against it, let's talk about the pros and cons of that if we could.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of borrowing from those plans at all, right? 401k plans, they make you pay it back so aggressively that any returns you make, you're pretty much paying for that money, right? You're not getting paid. And I always like profit. I always like to expect the best but prepare for the worst. So I like to know that I'm making good profit, good cash flow above and beyond what it cost me. So for the most part, if my clients decided they're going to do that, it's going to be more just pulling that money out, right? Just withdrawing it, take that tax hit over the next 3 years and then not pay it back. And that's typically what people are doing, because here's the other thing to consider too, is that right now we are historically, this is the lowest tax bracket we've been in decades, right? So some people are even going beyond the 100,000. Some people are saying, maybe they'll only pull out the 100,000 this year, but come January 1st, they're pulling out some of the rest. Just today, I spoke with a guy that's looking to hire us, and he said, hey, my big question is I've got money stuck in a Roth, like 36,000. I've got another 400,000 stuck in an old 401k. I'm getting no cash flow from these things. These things aren't really paying me. What do I do? And I mentioned the CARES Act. And I said, and he actually was, his wife was actually unemployed trying to find work. I said, well, confirm with the CPA always. That's always my advice, right? But you're the kind of person that they developed the CARES Act provision for. So I don't think this will be a big fight for you, but $100,000 you get out. Yeah, you'll pay the tax, but now we can actually do something with that money here in 2020 at the end of the year. And then the other 300,000, maybe you pull it out, maybe you don't. Maybe we self-direct it, maybe we throw it into certain deals or whatever. But for the most part, like 2021 is also another low year. The Trump tax plan ends next year in 2021. After that, it's up for grabs. We don't know what's going to happen. They could raise taxes significantly. They might just raise them a little bit to like a frog in boiling water just to get us used to it. It's hard to say, but it's hard to imagine it going lower than it's been in decades, right? Like it would really be hard to imagine unless something was so catastrophic that there was that pressure politically to do so.
Mm-hmm. So that's another question that I've had, Chris, and that we all know that the markets and the financial markets is what we're paying attention to, meaning the lenders. They usually kind of hold their breath around election time. So every 4 years, everybody wants to see what's going to happen. And so, we don't get a whole lot done during the end of the year. And so we've still got closings and we've still got things moving forward. But I guess from your standpoint, you're watching this a heck of a lot closer than most of us here. Why is that? What changes so much in policy? And have you had these conversations with the banks or lenders? Why do they pause? And how long does that last into January or whatever until they see what the ground rules are? Could you touch on that?
Yeah, it's kind of the same reason when that guy said, well, should I pull out 300,000, in 2021? And I always tell him like, hey, I can't give that advice because I dropped that securities license after reading that Kiyosaki book, right? But I tell them like, it depends. It really does. Like election time, it's not about who becomes president nearly as much as who gets voted into Congress, who gets in the House of Representatives. They're the ones that make the laws. The president could veto it, right? But they can override his vote, so the big thing is if we go, and no, not trying to point fingers on who's good or bad, but typically Democrats want higher taxes. And we've already seen his tax plan is way more aggressive than what Trump's is, especially if you're in the higher income brackets, right? So a lot of it, like he's saying, well, what, do you think I should pull out in 2021? I said, we're going to wait and see. Because if those taxes are going to go up, because we got people that say, yes, I support more taxes that pay for more programs, you might want to pull it all out in 2021, regardless of the fact it jumps you up in a higher bracket. It might still be lower than what it will be in the future, right? The other thing to consider too is remember that if you have money in IRAs and 401ks, you're going to have to pay tax on that money someday, right? So the question you have to ask yourself is, do I trust what's going to happen in the future? It's that accumulation versus acceleration mindset, right? Like I always look for acceleration of building that cash and building up faster to generate that income for you. And so sometimes, we don't want to gamble on the fact that even if it's a Republican, they might still need to raise taxes just to pay for the massive amount of printing money that we've done in the last few months, right? You see the charts, it's just skyrocketed, the amount of money is being printed, and they're trying to leverage it against their balance sheets and everything. But the truth is that there's got to be a comeuppance, right? There's got to be a way to put those things back into balance. And so for me, if I were a betting person, again, this is not recommendation, the likelihood is between this year and next year is probably your golden opportunity to get money away from things that are going to get taxed, right? And get into things that are more tax advantaged, like what you do, But again, we never know. It could surprise us. It's up in the air. The thing you got to watch for, of course, is who's going to, what are the voices saying? The voices are saying, I don't care about more tax. We need socialism. Well, if that's the case, get your money out now. The more voices you hear about socialism, the more you know that your tax bill is going to go up.
So, Chris, you've been on the other side, at least
Mm-hmm.
advising in the traditional sense, and so that is why you're the anti-financial advisor. So, tell us what that looks like from a standpoint of a client coming to work with you. And I know you've searched the landscape and decided if you're going to go out on
Mm-hmm.
your own that this is the route that you're taking, or at least led you to real estate, which is primarily where you're
Yeah.
guiding folks. So tell us what that looks like, and maybe even a little bit of background on how you arrived at that after surveying the landscape and looking at all the other alternative investments out there that you could be, helping your folks to not only create cash flow but wealth with, if you could.
Yeah, there's an evolution for sure. Like I used to stay completely away from creating passive income. It was all about, just freeing up money, right? Just finding money. That was the thing in the last recession, right? Because that's what I was going through. I never teach anything I don't do myself. And so when I was out of the rat race in 2006, 2007, I came out of retirement to teach people. But when the recession hit, I was gambling with some of my real estate back then. I was back in the rat race. So I couldn't keep telling people, here's how to get out of the rat race when I was in it. So eventually when I did get out of the rat race the second time, which was in 2016, I only recommend getting out of the rat race once, by the way. It's much more fun. But 2016, I did it again. That's when I started going that path again of like, here's how to get out. Here's the thing that every time people come to me is like, okay, Chris, I've seen the path. Just like I showed somebody on a podcast recently, you can max fund a 401k, but even after for 30 years, you're dumping in 20,000 a year almost of your own money, only to live on 13,000 a year before it gets taxed, the equivalent of 13,000 a year, right? After inflation. That's not a fun strategy. And so instead, just like that guy I was talking to, right? He's like, that 400,000 401k, 36,000 in Roth, a little bit of equity in his house. The thing is like, all right, let's find the resources, find the ways to get that money, maybe ways you didn't even consider before. Do it in a way that, by the way, with his house refinance, he's actually freeing up almost $1,000 a month with what we're doing, right? And he's getting a little bit of cash out. And that's always cool because now we can save money, which helps him get to his freedom goal faster, right? Because his cash flow goal is about 10,000 a month, right? Well, even if we didn't cash out 300,000 of that IRA money, we could easily create at least, an average of 14, 15,000 a year with that money, that little bit of money, the 100,000 from there and the Roth IRA and a little bit of equity from the house. We can make 14, 15,000 a year just this year alone. Here's the key. I call it an income avalanche, right? Is that we want to reinvest that money. So you get that 15,000 a year plus the money he was putting in the 401k, that right there, even if he just goes and only has enough money just to buy a single family home. Cool. Let's buy a single family home then, if that fits up to your goals. Here's the key thing. His big worry was, Chris, I get shiny object syndrome and I hear these podcasts and everything sounds awesome. He's like, I hear self-storage and then I hear this thing about franchises because like I have, the options for franchises, or I hear oil investing. That's another option, right? And I hear all these things. Well, how do I know which one? I'm like, well, it's easy. First we figure out, one, are you a credit investor or not? Because that tells you which options you have. Two is, are you focused on cash flow or growth or both, right? Like which one are we looking at? Depending on what we do with the money. Like I told him with the IRA money, even if we don't cash it out, cool, we can invest that in things and let it grow. And that's where syndications is perfect for you. We might lose some tax benefits, but at least if we get some massive growth, who cares? If he wants all cash flow, great. Let's find a way to tax it, through tax advantages using our CPAs or attorneys, figuring out ways to get that money out and minimize the tax so we can deploy more cash, right? That's really what we're doing. We're really just doing planning and strategizing and connecting to deals, right? And that sort of thing. And then allowing people to kind of have something to bounce these ideas off of. Because what financial advisors do you find out there that say, yeah, you should buy the real estate property? Because they don't make a commission off that. They're going to say, I don't know, real estate's kind of risky, but this mutual fund over here, this is awesome. Yeah, you have no control over it. And it's going to only pay you maybe 7% a year if you're lucky, but it's awesome because it could do something cool. That is just ridiculous. And that's again, their pocketbook will always direct you that way. This is just looking for a way to look at the alternative ways, and based on your plan and what you want to create, the life you want, how do we make sure that the investments you do match up with that? And sometimes I get people that want to do real estate, and occasionally I get people that say, I want nothing to do with real estate. I need another option, right? And that's what we kind of look for. Is like, what are those options? You ultimately make the call. I let people be the full, really the ultimate decision maker in that call, because I literally can't tell you to buy this or that. but we can definitely present the option, say, based on what you want, here are the best options, here are the results. What do you think? And that's how we work.
So, Chris, many of the folks on this podcast, like myself, they come to you, or you find them because they are syndicators and they're putting together projects. And here are the types of projects that they have, whether they're cash flowing projects or equity building, wealth building, and usually two flavors. Those two flavors fall in those camps. And then they're wanting to attract the Chris Miles of the world who are guiding. And again, I hate to say advising because you're the anti, but working with people to create this freedom plan. How can they put themselves in the best light to attract folks like yourselves, as well as the individual investors out there?
To be the best light, like to be most attractive to that, or what do you mean?
Yeah. So in other words, I'm like many folks here, we're self-storage developers. We're self-storage. We acquire facilities and we lay our private equity on top of that. Our growth is only limited by the amount of people that we can bring in, accredited investors, into our project. Yeah. So how do we find more of those folks? But ultimately, how do we find folks like you that represent lots of folks that can maybe say, hey, I know this guy or this gal over here that's doing a great job. They're a syndicator. They develop self-storage facilities, or they acquire. I vetted them, and I think that's a good plan that you may want to invest with them in one of their syndications or one of their funds. How do our folks and people like myself find more Chris Miles out there?
It's hard. That's the thing I've noticed. It's even people that believe like I do don't always know how to create a plan like we do, right? And that's the hardest thing. The good news is over the last year, I've started to train other people to do what I do, right? Because I realize this is much bigger than me and I can't do it all myself, especially because I'm semi-retired myself. I don't want to be working full time, So I only take on 3 one-on-one clients a month anyways. And then I got other coaches I can refer to. So that's the main thing is I'm trying to create a ripple effect, not only through my clients, but I've started to create a ripple effect through advisors. And it's really like the Matrix, right? Like it's the red pill, blue pill example, right? Like so few people want to wake up from the Matrix. And, but that's kind of my job is how do I wake those people up and get more people like me out there?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we don't have a red pill or blue pill nor a magic wand, but I'll ask the question anyway as we wind up here. Tell me what you do foresee in 2021, regardless. And again, I know we don't know what taxes are going to look like at monetary policy. What advice, and maybe not even advice, but what are some things to look out for as self-storage and commercial real estate investors and developers? What do you see coming down the pike around the horizon?
Self-storage personally, like that's the one I've been telling my clients to watch out for first, right? Because definitely whenever there's a recession-like situation, I believe that 2021, at least by late 2021, we'll start to see bigger effects of that. I mean, there's already whispers and rumors, and some people are saying, "Oh, it's reversed. We're fine. Like everything's good." And I got to tell you, like, there's nothing saying that we're all okay. I feel like this is like the quiet before the storm, right? I feel that's where we're in right now. So I think self-storage is a great place to be looking right now. Commercial, I've told a lot of people of my clients, commercial, look out for when you start seeing people trying to do big development deals, especially like office space. I think we're changing. I don't think office space is going to be the same anymore. Maybe virtual office space, where there might be like the part-time, renting of that kind of stuff. But the typical, like people just businesses working out of offices. Give you an example. We have a big tech sector here in Utah, right? Mm-hmm. One of the friends I have, like his tech company, they were all about, no, we stay in the office. That's it. Mm-hmm. Well, COVID forced them to think differently. Now they're saying, wow, look at the profits we're making and everybody's working from home, still productive. Mm-hmm. We don't need a big office. We're just going to get a tiny office instead of rent down an entire floor. Mm-hmm. So I think so here's the thing, temporarily, I think that's going to be a horrible investment. This is just my opinion, right? But I do believe, and this is probably where you come in more, I believe converting that space to something different, or down the line, this could be like a repeat of what happened in New York City during the Great Depression. If you remember John F. Kennedy's dad, he actually went from $4 million net worth in 1929 to $80 million net worth by 1935. Mm-hmm. And where did he do it? He actually bought crap loads of commercial space in New York City. Mm-hmm. And I think there's going to be somebody like doing that kind of thing too. Like he got huge. He bought it when it was dirt cheap. Everybody was vacating. He bought it, turned it around, and was able to, make literally hundreds of millions of dollars as a result. And I think that's what we're going to kind of see start to happen. We're going to start to see some of the more of the obvious investments start to pop out as we move into 2021. More of those opportunities will be showing, and I think we'll see more of it. But here's the warning: don't stop investing now, though. I think there's still great opportunities now, still great things to do. Don't wait for 2021 or 2022. I think there's plenty of opportunities now to take advantage of, and you have time on your side as well.
I would agree. And I will just echo that again to you folks. And I think, that's a repeat from every podcast, and that now is the time. I know that some folks are waiting because of a lack of clarity. But to Chris's point, and what the drum that we've been beating all along is I see no greater time in our history right now than to take advantage of the situation that we're in. Nobody likes a recession. Nobody likes a pandemic, but we certainly enjoy in our industry the demand that is created as a result of that, and the fact that we have the lowest interest rates that we've had in history. And you're right, Chris. We are waiting, not waiting. We know that we will see more of these, not necessarily office buildings, but on the self-storage side, the industrial buildings to be repurposed. And we're purchasing and converting big box retails and other types of businesses, unfortunately, that have gone out with COVID. Yeah. And that we're most likely on the ropes, and we're going to go out as we head into that recession in 2021, as you mentioned, anyways. And so not only are we looking for the standalones, but some of the folks that are on this podcast and investors in our mastermind, they're buying up the retail strip centers and repurposing the whole thing. So storage is one of those that's very easy to be able to do, to go into a grocery store, into an industrial building. The zoning is very similar, and we've got demand, and that demand for storage likes it to be in the neighborhood, which is where those grocery stores and those other businesses are. So we are poised to be able to take advantage of that. And now is definitely the time, folks. So
exciting time.
It is. So with that, Chris, once again, I want to thank you for your time today. So tell us a little bit about how folks can get in touch with you, because you've got a wealth of knowledge to share that we just scratched the surface today.
Yeah. You can always go to my website, moneyripples.com. That's MONEYRIPPLES.com. And there's great stuff on there. You can even reach out to us there. And you can even follow our podcast. If you're already following this one, add our podcast to the list, which is called The Chris Miles Money Show. I know it's original title, but The Chris Miles Money Show, I've got tons and tons of podcasts and episodes and a lot of things that I talk about with what's coming up and different strategies you can use, even how to, double dip on your investment returns so you can make money in two places at once. I mean, we talk about all kinds of strategies there. So it's good stuff.
Great. Well, folks, Chris knows his stuff. We don't bring guests on here that don't. So go visit him and begin to pull down some of that free info and give him a jingle. So, Chris, any other parting words of wisdom that you have that you would like to leave us with before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, I'll just say this, is that there's hope. Despite the fear and all the stuff that's going on, I would just say turn off the news and look around. Like, the opportunity is there. There's plenty of deals right now, even though there might be certain deals that are more abundant than others right now, right? Like your Scott, here's a good example, but there's hope. Like, there's putting money into the traditional plans will not work. Has already been proven not to work. Don't keep being that person. Don't be the person that ends up being like every other American. You've got to do something different, go around the traditional system, and you'll find out that there's less risk, better returns, and you have more freedom there. So make sure you focus on that.
Yeah. Well said, brother. Appreciate you and agree 100%, and looking forward to seeing you again very soon. Thanks, Chris.
Same here, Scott. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening as always. Now, we're going to be talking about topics like this that are on target for the times that we find ourselves in. So it is important that you are listening to this podcast every single week, because the guests that I'm going to be bringing on and the topics we will be covering are relevant to what we are all going through right now. And it's just going to get better and better and better in terms of the content that we're going to be discussing, and it's going to be more timely than ever. So please, make sure you subscribe to the show and make sure you're paying attention to these episodes as they are coming out during this period, as I am specifically going out and finding guests who are providing really valuable information you need right now. So thank you so much. We'll see you next week.